a WikiVidi documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Joe Manchin. Joseph Manchin III is an American politician serving as the senior United States Senator from West Virginia, a seat he has held since 2010. A member of the Democratic Party, he previously served as the 34th Governor of West Virginia from 2005 to 2010 and the 27th Secretary of State of West Virginia from 2001 to 2005. Manchin has been known throughout his career to be a moderate, or even conservative, Democrat. A fact which has allowed him to win elections in West Virginia even as the state shifted from one of the most heavily Democratic in the country to one of the most heavily Republican. He won the 2004 West Virginia gubernatorial election by a large margin and was re-elected with an even larger margin in 2008. In both years, Republican presidential candidates captured the majority of West Virginia's votes. Manchin won the special election in 2010 to fill the seat vacated by Senator Robert Byrd when he died in office. Manchin was elected to a full term in 2012 with 60% of the vote. Manchin became the state's senior U.S. Senator when J. Rockefeller retired in 2015. As a member of Congress, Manchin is known for his bipartisanship, voting or working with Republicans on issues such as abortion and gun ownership. He opposed the energy policies of President Barack Obama, voted against the Don't Ask, Don't Tell Repeal Act of 2010, voted for removing federal funding from Planned Parenthood in 2015, and voted to confirm most of Republican President Donald Trump's cabinet and judicial appointees. However, Manchin has repeatedly voted against attempts to repeal the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, voted to preserve funding for Planned Parenthood in 2017, and voted against the 2017 Republican tax plan. Manchin has complained about the toxic lack of bipartisanship in Congress on almost every issue. Liberal activists argue he is too conservative for the Democratic Party, while Republicans argue he is too liberal for West Virginia. Early life and education. Manchin was born in 1947 in Farmington, West Virginia, a small coal mining town, the second of 5 children of Mary O. and John Manchin. Manchin was derived from Mancini. His father was of Italian descent, and his maternal grandparents were Czechoslovak immigrants. His father owned a carpet and furniture store, and his grandfather, Joseph Manchin, owned a grocery store. His father and his grandfather both served as mayor of Farmington, West Virginia. His uncle, A.J. Manchin, was a member of the West Virginia House of Delegates and was elected as the state's Secretary of State and Treasurer. Manchin graduated from Farmington High School in 1965. He entered West Virginia University on a football scholarship in 1965. However, an injury during practice ended his football career. Manchin graduated in 1970 with a degree in business administration and went to work for his family's business, where he ran a carpet store. Early political career. Manchin was elected to the West Virginia House of Delegates in 1982 at the age of 35 and was elected to the West Virginia Senate in 1986, where he served until 1996. He ran for governor in 1996, finishing second to Charlotte Pritt among a large group of candidates in the Democratic primary election. He later ran and was elected as Secretary of State of West Virginia in 2000. Governor of West Virginia. Manchin announced his intention to challenge incumbent Democratic Governor Bob Wise in the 2004 Democratic primary election in May 2003. Wise decided not to seek re-election after a scandal, and Manchin won the Democratic primary and general election by large margins. His election marked the first time that two people of the same political party had followed one another in the West Virginia governor's office since 1964. Manchin was a member of the National Governors Association, the Southern Governors Association, and the Democratic Governors Association. He was also chairman of the Southern States Energy Board, state's chair of the Appalachian Regional Commission, and chairman of the Interstate Mining Compact Commission. In July 2005, Massey Energy CEO Don Blankenship sued Manchin, alleging that Manchin had violated Blankenship's First Amendment rights by threatening increased government scrutiny of his coal operations in retaliation for Blankenship's political activities. Blankenship had donated substantial funds into campaigns to defeat a proposed pension bond amendment and oppose the re-election of State Supreme Court Justice Warren McGraw. And he fought against a proposed increase in the severance tax on extraction of mineral resources. Soon after defeat of the pension bond amendment, the State Division of Environmental Protection revoked a permit approval for controversial new silos near Marsh Fork Elementary School in Raleigh County. While area residents had complained for some time that the coal operation there endangered their children, Blankenship claimed that the DEP acted in response to his opposition to the bond amendment. During the 2006 Sago mine disaster in early January 2006 in Upshur County, West Virginia, Manchin appeared to confirm incorrect reports that 12 miners had survived. In actuality, only one survived. Manchin later acknowledged that an unintentional miscommunication had occurred with rescue teams in the mine. On February 1, 2006, he ordered a stop to all coal production in West Virginia, pending safety checks, after 2 more miners were killed in separate accidents. 16 West Virginia coal miners died from mining accidents in early 2006. In November 2006, Survey USA ranked him as one of the most popular governors in the country with a 74% approval rating. Manchin easily won re-election to a second term as governor in 2008 against Republican Russ Weeks, capturing 69.77% of the vote and winning every county. 2010. Due to the declining health of Senator Robert Byrd, speculation focused on what Manchin's response would be if Byrd died. The governor consistently refused to comment on the subject prior to Byrd's death, except for stating that he would not appoint himself to the position. Byrd died on June 28, 2010, and Manchin appointed Kurt Goodwin, his 36-year-old legal advisor, on July 16. On July 20, 2010, Manchin announced he would seek the Senate seat. In the Democratic primary on August 28, he defeated former Democratic congressman and former West Virginia Secretary of State Ken Heckler. In the general election, he then defeated Republican John Rees. 2012. Manchin chose to stand for re-election to a full term in 2012. According to the Democratic firm Public Policy Polling, early polling found Manchin heavily favored, leading Congresswoman Shelley Moore Carpito 50-39, 2010 opponent John Rees 60-31, and Congressman David McKinley 57-28. Manchin had not endorsed his party's candidate, President Barack Obama, for the 2012 presidential election, saying that he had some real differences with the presumptive nominees of both major parties, finding fault with Obama's economic and energy policies, and questioning Romney's understanding of the challenges facing ordinary people. Manchin defeated Republican John Rees and Mountain Party candidate Bob Henry Baber with 60.49% of the total vote and won a full term in the U.S. Senate. 2018. Manchin is running for re-election in 2018. He was challenged in the Democratic primary by Paula Jean Swearingen. Swearingen is an activist and coal miner's daughter who is supported by former members of the Bernie Sanders campaign. Swearingen criticized Manchin for voting with the Republicans and supporting the policies of Donald Trump. On the Republican side, Manchin is being challenged by West Virginia Attorney General Patrick Morrisey. In August 2017, Morrisey publicly asked Manchin to resign from the Senate Democratic leadership team. Manchin responded, "I don't give a shit, you understand?" to a Charleston Gazette Mail reporter when asked about Morrisey's call. "I just don't give a shit. Don't care if I get elected, don't care if I get defeated, how about that?" Tenure. Manchin was sworn in by Vice President Joe Biden on November 15, 2010, succeeding interim Senator Kurt Goodwin. Manchin named Democratic strategist Chris Kofinas to be his chief of staff. In 2015, Manchin announced that he would seek re-election to the Senate in 2018. Political positions. Joe Manchin is often considered to be a moderate, or even conservative, Democrat. Manchin describes himself as fiscally responsible and socially compassionate. CBS News has called him a rifle-brandishing moderate who is about as centrist as a senator can get. In February 2018, Congressional Quarterly published a study finding that Manchin had voted with President Trump's position 71% of the time. As of June 2018, 538, which tracks congressional votes, found that Manchin had voted with President Trump's position nearly 61% of the time. In 2013, the National Journal gave Manchin an overall score of 55% conservative and 46% liberal. Abortion. Manchin identifies as pro-life. He has mixed ratings from both pro-choice and pro-life political action groups. In 2018, Planned Parenthood, which supports legal abortion, gave Manchin a lifetime grade of 57%, while National Right to Life, which opposes abortion, gave Manchin a 40% score. In 2016, the NRLC scored Manchin at 75%, and now All Pro-Choice America gave him a 100% in the same year. On August 3, 2015, he broke with Democratic leadership by voting in favor of a Republican-sponsored bill to terminate federal funding for Planned Parenthood, a non-profit organization that provides reproductive health services, including abortions, both in the United States and globally. The organization had been accused of illegal activity. He has the endorsement of Democrats for Life of America, a pro-life Democratic PAC. On March 30, 2017, however, Manchin expressed support for abortion rights providers by voting against H.J. Rees, 43. A pending federal regulation would have prevented states from withholding money from abortion providers. H.J. Rees, 43, which was signed by President Trump, would have nullified that regulation. In April 2017, Manchin endorsed the continued funding of Planned Parenthood. Also in 2017, Planned Parenthood gave Manchin a rating of 44%. In January 2018, Manchin joined two other Democrats and the majority of Republicans by voting in favor of a bill to ban abortion after 20 weeks. In June 2018, following the retirement of Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy, Manchin urged Trump not to appoint a judge who would seek to overturn Roe v. Wade and to instead choose a centrist. Afghanistan. On June 21, 2011, Manchin delivered a speech on the Senate floor calling for a substantial and responsible reduction in the United States military presence in Afghanistan. He said, "We can no longer afford to rebuild Afghanistan and America. We must choose. And I choose America." Manchin introduced legislation to reduce the use of overseas service and security contractors. He successfully amended the 2013 National Defense Authorization Act to cap contractors' taxpayer-funded salaries at $230,000. Bipartisanship. In his first year in office, Manchin met one-on-one with all of his 99 Senate colleagues in an effort to get to know them better. On December 13, 2010, Manchin participated in the launch of No Labels, a new, nonpartisan organization that is committed to bringing all sides together to move the nation forward. Manchin is a co-chair of No Labels. Manchin worked with Republican Senator Pat Toomey to introduce legislation that would require a background check for most gun sales. Manchin opposed the January 2018 government shutdown. The New York Times suggested that Manchin helped bring an end to the shutdown by threatening not to run for re-election unless his fellow Democrats put an end to it. Before his Senate swearing-in, rumors suggested that the Republican Party was courting Manchin to change parties. Although the Republicans later suggested that Manchin was the source of the rumors, they attempted to convince him again in 2014 after retaking control of the Senate. He again rejected their overtures. As the 2016 elections approached, reports speculated that Manchin would switch to the Republican Party if the Senate were in a 50-50 tie. However, he later stated that he would stay with the Democratic Party for at least as long as he remained in the Senate. China. In July 2017, he urged Trump to block the sale of the Chicago Stock Exchange to Chinese investors, arguing that China's rejection of fundamental free market norms and property rights of private citizens makes me strongly doubt whether an exchange operating under the direct control of a Chinese entity can be trusted to self-regulate now and in the future. He also expressed concern that the challenges plaguing the Chinese market, lack of transparency, currency manipulation, etc., will bleed into the Chicago Stock Exchange and adversely impact financial markets across the country. Donald Trump. Manchin welcomed Donald Trump's presidency, saying, "He'll correct the trading policies, the imbalance in our trade policies, which are horrible." He supported the idea of Trump calling companies to keep them from moving factories overseas. Manchin voted for most of the Trump nominees. He was the only Democrat to vote in confirmation of Trump cabinet appointees Jeff Sessions and Steven Mnuchin, one of two Democrats who voted to confirm Scott Pruitt as EPA administrator, and one of three who voted to confirm Rex Tillerson. In June 2017, Manchin voted to support President Trump's $350 billion arms deal with Saudi Arabia. In his 2018 campaign for Senate, Manchin announced that he supports Trump's proposal to construct a border wall along the southern border of the continental United States. He also said that he regrets voting for Hillary Clinton and would be open to supporting Donald Trump for president in 2020. Drugs. In June 2011, Manchin joined Senator Chuck Schumer in seeking a crackdown on Bitcoin currency transactions, saying that they facilitated illegal drug trade transactions. The transactions leave no traditional bank transfer money trail for investigators to follow, and leave it hard to prove a package recipient knew in advance what was in a shipment. Using an anonymizing network known as Tor, one opinion website said the senators wanted to disrupt the Silk Road drug website. In May 2012, in an effort to reduce prescription drug abuse, Manchin successfully proposed an amendment to the Food and Drug Administration reauthorization bill to reclassify hydrocodone as a Schedule II controlled substance. Energy and Environment. Manchin sits on the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee and supports a comprehensive, all-of-the-above energy approach that uses coal. Manchin's first bill in the Senate dealt with what he calls the EPA's overreach. After the EPA vetoed a previously approved permit for the spruce mine in Logan County, West Virginia, Senator Manchin offered the EPA Fair Play Act. The bill would clarify and confirm the authority of the Environment Protection Agency to deny or restrict the use of defined areas as disposal sites for the discharge of dredged or filled material. Manchin said the bill would prevent the agency from changing its rules on businesses after permits have already been granted. On October 6, 2010, Manchin directed a lawsuit aimed at overturning new federal rules concerning mountaintop removal mining. Filed by the State Department of Environmental Protection, the lawsuit accuses U.S. EPA of overstepping its authority and asks the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of West Virginia to throw out the federal agency's new guidelines for issuing Clean Water Act permits for coal mines. In order to qualify for the permits, mining companies need to prove their projects would not cause the concentration of pollutants in the local water to rise 5 times past the normal level. The New York Times reported that EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson said the new legislation would protect 95% of aquatic life by banning operators from dumping mine waste into streams. Manchin has received criticism from environmentalists due to his close family ties to the coal industry. He served as president of Energy Systems in the late 1990s before becoming active in politics. On his financial disclosures in 2009 and 2010, his reported earnings from the company were $1,363,916 and $417,255 respectively. Critics have stated his opposition to health regulations that would raise expenses for the industry are due to his stake in the industry. Jim Scornias, chairman of West Virginia's Sierra Club chapter, stated that he's been nothing but a mouthpiece for the coal industry his whole public life. However, opinions on the subject are mixed. The Charleston Gazette noted, the prospect that Manchin's $1.7 million plus in recent Enersystems earnings might tilt him even more strongly pro-coal might seem remote, given the deep economic and cultural connections that the industry maintains in West Virginia. On November 14, 2011, Manchin chaired his first field hearing of that committee in Charleston, West Virginia, to focus on Marcellus Shale natural gas development and production. Manchin said, "We are literally sitting on top of tremendous potential with the Marcellus Shale. We need to work together to chart a path forward in a safe and responsible way that lets us produce energy right here in America." Manchin supports building the Keystone XL pipeline from Canada. Manchin has said, "It makes so much common sense that you want to buy oil off your friends and not your enemies." The pipeline would span over 2,000 miles across the United States. On November 9, 2011, Manchin introduced the Fair Compliance Act with Senator Dan Coats. Their bill would lengthen timelines and establish benchmarks for utilities to comply with two major Environmental Protection Agency air pollution rules. The legislation would extend the compliance deadline for the Cross-State Air Pollution Rule, (OCSAPR), by 3 years and the deadline for the Utility MACT Rule by 2 years, setting both to January 1, 2017. Manchin introduced the American Alternative Fuels Act on May 10, 2011, with Senator John Barrasso. The bill would remove restrictions on the development of alternative fuels, repeal part of the 2007 energy bill restricting the federal government from buying alternative fuels, and encourage the development of algae-based fuels and synthetic natural gas. Regarding the bill, Manchin said, "Our unacceptably high gas prices are hurting not only West Virginians, but all Americans. And they underscore a critical need. The federal government needs to be a partner, not an obstacle, for businesses that can transform our domestic energy resources into gas." In 2011, Manchin was the only Democratic senator to support the proposed Energy Tax Prevention Act, which sought to prohibit the United States Environmental Protection Agency from regulating greenhouse gas. He was also one of 4 Democratic senators to vote against the Stream Protection Rule. In 2012, Manchin supported a GOP effort to scuttle Environmental Protection Agency regulations that mandate cuts in mercury pollution and other toxic emissions from coal-fired power plants, while West Virginia's other senator, Jay Rockefeller, did not. Manchin criticized Obama's environmental regulations as a war on coal and demanded what he described as a proper balance between the needs of the environment and the coal business. The Los Angeles Times has noted that while professing environmental concerns, he has consistently stood up for coal, saying, "No one is going to stop using fossil fuels for a long time." He does not deny the existence of man-made climate change, wrote the Los Angeles Times, but is reluctant to curtail it. In February 2017, he was one of only 2 Democratic senators to vote to confirm Scott Pruitt as administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency. In June 2017, Manchin supported President Trump's withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accord, saying he supported a cleaner energy future, but that the Paris deal failed to strike a balance between our environment and the economy. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?